Hi everyone, it's Raina. So here are three mistakes Taurus makes in relationships. And I've been doing this series, and I could actually compile a list of more than three things. So I don't want to get it twisted, but I just wanted to keep it on the brief side. And this is not going to apply to all Taurus people. This is going to be if a Taurus person does make a mistake in relationships, it may tend to revolve around one of these things. And it can be a broader sense, and it's coming from a certain belief system that Taurus may operate under. So, number one is thinking that you own the other person. I don't give an F if you put a ring on it. Rings can be taken off. And people have a right to change their mind when they have gotten together with you. I know that that sounds appalling and maybe slightly terrifying, but it is just 100% the case. And I remember I have Taurus rising, but I'm only saying that because you might be saying, well, what do you have? Because I'm a Sag. So we tend to like our freedom anyway, but I have Taurus rising. So I do have, some influences that connect with Taurus. And I'm just saying this in a more like a bigger picture sort of way, but I remember one time because I have lived with my partner for many years, and he and I are both Sagittarians, and we both are not really that enamored by the prospect of marriage because of the illusion that it causes in a lot of people, and plus we just don't see a need for it. And I remember just some stranger being in a laundromat, and I was in my 20s at the time. And I've been with he and I, my partner and I have been together for many years. So, even when I was in my 20s, years ago, I was in this relationship, and I told some lady about it, and she was like so concerned that I wasn't married to this man. And she said, "Aren't you afraid that he's going to leave you?" And at the time, I was in my 20s when she said this. And this woman was probably like twice my age. And I remember thinking how childish it was for a grown ass woman to ask me that question. Aren't you afraid that if you don't get married, that your partner will leave you? And that's when I really realized that that is the motivating factor, probably most of the time, besides any kind of legal benefits that are there for people to get married. And I'm like, whoa. And I said to her, the divorce rate is 50%. So you can't say that marriage is guaranteeing that people stay together forever. It doesn't work that way. You know, getting married will not guarantee that your partner will not cheat, not quote unquote abandon you, fall in love with somebody else, whatever you want to call it. And you better get that straight because you're going to be in for a rude awakening. In certain cases, I could say 50% of you are going to be in for a rude awakening, but I don't know what the current rate is, and I don't know how accurate that is. But the point is that marriage doesn't sprinkle fairy dust on your relationship. Marriage is a social construct, it is a ritual, and that is all it is. Now, we could say it's an energetic structure. We could actually say that, but it's not the legal union that is that energetic structure as much as the intention. Even the ceremony, I think, is part of the energetic structure because if you go into a ceremony with sacred feelings, then yes, maybe you do seal the deal. But you both have to be on the same page with that one. It can't be one-sided. So anyway, I just want, Taurus people to understand this. And Taurus rules the second house of earned income and possessions. So Taurus can think of their partner as their possession, and they can become very possessive. And this is something that Taurus is known for, infamous for. And you don't want to do that to someone, I guarantee you, because you might meet the wrong one. You might meet the one who is going to run for the hills. And I have seen this firsthand with a Taurus person. Now, I'm not saying that that's what split up the relationship. There are other beautiful, and I'm being facetious, Taurian qualities that probably really contributed to that situation as well. But this was a very, very long-term marriage, complete with grandchildren. And now it is no longer a thing. So when you are possessive, first of all, you're acting as if you have the right to tell somebody who they can talk to, what they can say, how they can dress, all of those things. And I'm not saying that you can't have discussions about those things, but to just assume that you have the right is the problem. And this is where, things like marriage come in, because then you say, well, yeah, I mean, we're married, and of course that's not appropriate. Maybe when we were dating, I didn't have that right, but now I do. No, I don't care how much you paid for the wedding ring. I don't care how much the wedding cost. You can't do it, because that person has to be on board. Even if that person is chronically unfaithful. And even if we can all agree that being unfaithful isn't very honorable, you still cannot control what that other person does. And you have to practice more detachment so that you don't get caught up in any bad situations or prematurely end your relationship because of jealousy issues. If your partner seems to be very flirtatious, or if they are actually cheating, then you can certainly make a determination of whether or not you want to stay in that relationship. I'm not saying you have to endure somebody cheating. That's absurd. But to try to control someone and, get them to do what you want to do, no. Number 2, thinking relationships can be bought. Check to see what your Venus sign is. Venus and Taurus can be notorious for this. Actually, this is true of all the earth signs. And, well, I shouldn't say that. I think Taurus would be the worst offender. Capricorn and Virgo, I don't know. Maybe this is really a Taurus thing. But I think it's perfectly possible that Capricorn and Virgo may do variations with this, maybe not so much trying to buy a partner, but just automatically think that the money angle is perfectly normal to the extent it is in a relationship. Now, of course, if you're with someone in a serious relationship, money is going to come up, and that is perfectly legitimate. However, I'm even going back to when a relationship is in its infancy, and when the two of you are just dating and you can't really talk about monogamy because it's too early on. You may think that you can speed up the process by whining and dining another person and even buying gifts. And really, what happens, or what the person is doing, whether they understand this fully or not, is they're almost like making the other person obligated. If you've ever received well, I would say like an expensive gift, maybe not if it's like a box of candy or something, but if it's something more expensive, you can feel on the hook energetically if you accept that gift. The other person may feel like that, and they're more inclined to hang around, especially if they are interested in that sort of lifestyle. Maybe they are someone who is materialistic. And if you're buying them gifts, it's right up their alley. So that's what, especially if there is like a tit for tat situation, we would call that a transactional relationship. They're tit, you're tat. But no, like one person has an open wallet and one person, oh, I was going to say opens their legs, but I can make vulgar jokes to Taurus people because they can handle it. But as long as you're not bringing children into such a relationship, you do you. If you really know what you're getting yourself into. But I think a lot of people don't. I think a lot of people, especially women, don't realize how sensitive they are. And men can be sensitive too, don't get me wrong. But I think that women are biologically wired to associate sex with bonding, coupling, and raising a family. And when it doesn't happen, I think that that can set off alarm bells and can make the woman more feeling more vulnerable, insecure, and more likely to cling to the relationship, even if it is a bad one, even if it makes them feel lonelier and lonelier the more they engage in it. When you buy someone a gift, especially when it's premature, if it's an expensive gift and you barely know this person, you could be opening up a Pandora's box. You could be attracting a materialistic person who has no intention of being an actual partner. You can attract takers who don't give back to you. And it's not that I would feel very sorry for you, because if you're doing something financially, you may not really be invested emotionally. You may be just treating it as a transaction or as an exchange, an energy exchange. Well, okay, but what kind of energy is going on here? And is that energy sustaining itself? And that leads to number 3, which is confusing lust with love. I consider Taurus to be one of the lustiest signs, along with Leo, along with Aries. And Aries is a sign right next to you. So if your sun is in Taurus, you could very well have Mars in Aries. Bless your little heart. If you did have that, that would be something else. Because Mars can be the libido, and Aries, it's like, oof, off the charts. Or even like Taurus, it just has this, energizer bunny. Well, you could say that about Aries too. I'm talking about the endurance of a Taurus, the stamina. Taurus won't quit. But that has to be looked at separately from love. I'm not saying that you can't be physically attracted to a person that you're madly in love with. Hopefully that's totally the case, because the last thing you want is to be repelled by someone that you care for emotionally, and you can't figure out why you can't have the best of both worlds. You can. If you really care for someone but you're not physically attracted to them, maybe that person is a platonic friend. And that type of love is called agape love. It's like kind of, the brotherhood of man. And that is a completely legitimate form of love. You could even say it's a pure form of love in a way, because it's something that is not involving physical desire. It's more, I was going to say, it's more abstract in a sense. But in any case, if you're the kind of person who always seems to find somebody hot, and I'm not just talking about, oh, that person's attractive, but you have like kind of this in heat sort of reaction to that person, and you become like, oh, wow, I can't wait to get together, hook up with this person, and it's like that. How have your relationships been? Because I have a feeling that they have been more on the shallow side of the aisle and maybe very short lasting. So I'm going to tell you what you can do. Well, I want to make it clear, I'm not giving advice. I do not give advice, whether it's on YouTube or in private readings, because I honestly believe that everyone is responsible for their own choices. But this is like food for thought, okay? If you have a pattern of lusting after someone and getting physical with them very early into the relationship, and I'm talking specifically with women, men obviously can sleep with a woman, and by the way, let me just state that I'm talking here about the male-female dynamic. I can't speak on same-sex relationships, as I am not in one, but I will say that I do think that there might be some variations when you're talking about same-sex relationships, because you're talking about somebody of the same gender. So it's not like you're, in some cases, differently wired. You may be wired in the same way, and so it's not going to be the same scenario that and also like being socialized, not just wired, but socialized to be a certain way. So when you have opposite genders, there is more of the contrast, okay? And so if you have a tendency to really be turned on by someone, and that is the beginning of the relationship, but like you've had nightmare scenarios, or at the very least unsatisfying relationships, please consider going against type. Not necessarily wanting to go out with someone because they look just like such and such actor, or your type, what you have decided is your type. And this can just expand you. And even if it turns out that you're not really attracted to the person or people that you go out on dates with, at least you are getting the ball rolling. But I do also just say, in general, regardless of transits, just because of the nature of people's situations, it's a good idea to, not jump into the physical relationship prematurely. Because once you do that, you complicate things. You're getting physically intimate, and that can feel like it is real intimacy, and it's not. I don't think it is. And that's the danger of it, is that it can mimic real intimacy, or you can trick yourself into believing that you are bonding with this person. And again, I think women, especially modern women, think that they can play the same game as men, and they F around and find out. It was the F around of times, it was the find out of times. And when that happens, especially again for females, then they are left feeling even more lonely, even more alone, if you will, than they did before. All because they thought they could cut to the chase and kind of seal the deal. There is a purpose for dating. The purpose for me of dating is to really have conversations with potential partners. Maybe at the beginning, the conversations sound more like a job interview where you're questioning what their values are, what their goals are in life. And maybe it feels like that, but it's getting to know how they see the world and all of that, so you can see if you're on the same page. Okay, that's what I have for you. I hope that this resonated. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.